It was just a joke, a stupid text to my ex during a boring night when my boyfriend was playing video games like a zombie. I didn't mean it literally. I didn't mean for him to ever find out. It was just a way to feel wanted again, to remind myself I still had options. Why is everyone acting like I committed a crime for sending 7 words in a text message? Before I walk you through the full story, I just have a small favor to ask. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and let me know in the comments, what city are you watching from? It's always amazing to see how far this audience is reaching. I woke up to silence, which should have been my first warning sign. The apartment felt different somehow, emptier than usual. My boyfriend Marcus wasn't beside me in bed, but that wasn't unusual since he often left early for his construction job. What was unusual was the complete absence of sound. No shower running, no coffee maker brewing, no morning routine happening anywhere in the apartment. As I padded toward the bathroom in my oversized sleep shirt, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The dresser drawers were yanked open and completely empty. My side of the closet gaped like a missing tooth, all my clothes and shoes gone. Even my jewelry box had disappeared from the nightstand, leaving only a faint dust outline where it used to sit. I ran to the living room, my bare feet slapping against the hardwood floor, hoping there was some reasonable explanation for why my belongings had vanished overnight. Maybe Marcus was surprising me by organizing everything, or maybe we were being robbed and he was dealing with police somewhere. Any explanation seemed more likely than the horrible possibility that was forming in my mind. Marcus stood by the front door like a sentinel, fully dressed in his work clothes and holding his coffee mug with both hands. His face was set in an expression I'd never seen before, cold, distant, final. He looked at me the way you might look at a stranger who had knocked on your door at an inappropriate hour. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, and I glanced at it automatically. A notification from Instagram showed that my ex-boyfriend Tyler had responded to something I had sent him. The preview read, "Nice to know you still care," with a winking emoji, and my blood turned to ice as I remembered what I had done the night before. That's when I saw Marcus's laptop open on the counter, displaying his messages app in full screen. My text conversation with Tyler was right there, glowing like evidence at a crime scene. The message I had sent at 11:47 p.m. was highlighted. "My new boyfriend sucks." 7 words that had apparently destroyed my entire life while I slept. Marcus didn't say anything when he saw me staring at the screen. He just walked to the front door, opened it wide, and gestured toward the lawn with the same casual motion he might use to point out an interesting bird or a passing car. His silence was more terrifying than if he had screamed at me. I looked outside and felt the world tilt sideways. My suitcase sat in the middle of the front yard, surrounded by garbage bags full of my clothes, shoes, and personal items. My makeup collection was scattered across the grass like confetti, and my books were stacked in soggy piles near the sidewalk. Everything I owned had been ejected from our shared life and displayed for the entire neighborhood to see. The locks had already been changed. I could see the shiny new deadbolt that hadn't been there when I went to bed, along with a different doorknob that my key would never fit again. Marcus had spent hours methodically removing every trace of my existence from the apartment while I slept peacefully in what I had thought was our bed. He still hadn't spoken, but his message was crystal clear. When I finally found my voice and asked what he was doing, he looked at me with the kind of disappointment usually reserved for strangers who had let you down in some fundamental way. His response was quiet and devastating. "You said I suck, so now you can live without me." Then he closed the door with a soft click that sounded like a coffin lid, and I heard the new deadbolt slide into place with finality. I stood there barefoot on the cold concrete, clutching my sleep shirt around me and staring at the closed door, like it might open again if I waited long enough. But the blind snapped shut, cutting off even the possibility of seeing inside. The humiliation of standing in the front yard in my pajamas, while neighbors drove past on their way to work, was crushing. Mrs. Chen from next door was walking her dog and made a point of not making eye contact. though I could see her taking in the scene with the kind of curiosity people have for car accidents. I was a spectacle, a cautionary tale happening in real time. I gathered what I could carry and threw it into my car, leaving the rest scattered on the lawn because I couldn't bear to spend another minute performing my shame for the entertainment of everyone who passed by. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely get the key in the ignition, and I drove away without looking back at the apartment that had been my home just hours earlier. The whole disaster had started the night before, during what should have been a normal Tuesday evening. Marcus had come home from work tired and stressed, grabbed dinner from the fridge, and settled onto the couch with his PlayStation controller. This had become our routine lately, him gaming for hours while I scrolled through my phone, both of us existing in the same space, but living completely separate lives. I had tried to get his attention by asking about his day, suggesting we watch a movie together, even offering to order his favorite takeout for a late dinner. But he was deep into some multiplayer game with his friends, wearing his headset, and completely absorbed in whatever digital world he was conquering. I might as well have been invisible. That's when I made the mistake of opening Instagram and seeing Tyler's story. My ex-boyfriend was at some upscale restaurant, looking impossibly handsome, in a way that reminded me why I had been attracted to him in the first place. He was wearing an expensive watch I didn't recognize, and sitting across from a beautiful woman whose face was partially blocked by a wine glass. Tyler and I had broken up 8 months ago, after a relationship that had been passionate but unstable. He was exciting in all the ways that Marcus wasn't, spontaneous, charming, dangerous, but he was also unreliable, prone to disappearing for days without explanation, and completely incapable of commitment. I had chosen Marcus specifically because he was Tyler's opposite in every way that mattered, but seeing Tyler looking successful and happy while Marcus ignored me for video games triggered something ugly in me. I felt forgotten, taken for granted, like I was disappearing from my own relationship. The woman in Tyler's story was getting the attention and romance that I used to receive, while I was competing with the game console for my boyfriend's acknowledgement. I started typing before I really thought about what I was doing. The message to Tyler was born from frustration and a desperate need to feel relevant to someone, anyone. My new boyfriend sucks seemed like a harmless way to get Tyler's attention and remind myself that I had options beyond sitting alone while Marcus played games. I sent the text and immediately felt a rush of satisfaction when Tyler responded quickly with flirty messages asking if I wanted to talk about it. For a few minutes, I felt desired and interesting again, like the kind of woman who had choices rather than the kind who sat home being ignored. I deleted the conversation before going to bed, assuming that would be the end of it. What I didn't know was that Marcus had installed a device synchronization feature on our shared Apple account weeks earlier. He had mentioned wanting to surprise me with a collaborative playlist for our anniversary, and I had absent-mindedly agreed to let him sync our devices. I had completely forgotten about it until I saw my private messages displayed on his laptop screen. Marcus had seen the text the moment I sent it, along with Tyler's flirty responses and my own replies that had escalated throughout the evening. He had watched me lie to him in real time, deleting evidence while pretending to be a faithful girlfriend. While I thought I was being sneaky, he was planning the most thorough and humiliating breakup I could have imagined. Now I was sitting in my car outside a gas station, crying and trying to figure out where I was supposed to go. My phone was buzzing constantly with notifications that made my situation worse with each one. Tyler had screenshot our conversation and shared it with his friends, who were now liking and commenting on my misery like it was entertainment. My mutual friends with Marcus were starting to unfollow me on social media as word spread about what I had done. Several people had already texted, asking if it was true that I had been texting my ex behind Marcus's back. The story was spreading faster than I could control it, and I was being painted as the cheating girlfriend who had destroyed her own relationship through disloyalty. I called my best friend Sarah and begged to crash on her couch for a few days while I figured out my next steps. Sarah agreed reluctantly, but I could hear the judgment in her voice when she asked what had really happened. Even my closest friend was questioning my version of events, wondering if there was more to the story than I was admitting. Sarah's apartment was a cramped studio with barely enough room for one person, let alone a house guest with garbage bags full of belongings. I spread my clothes across her living room floor and tried to salvage what I could from the items that had been damaged by morning dew and sprinkler systems. My favorite dress had grass stains, my books were warped from moisture, and my makeup collection looked like it had been through a blender. The first few days at Sarah's place were a blur of self-pity and desperate attempts to contact Marcus. I called his phone repeatedly, but every call went straight to voicemail. I sent long text messages explaining that my message to Tyler had been a joke, that I had never intended to cheat or hurt him, that we could work through this if he would just talk to me. But Marcus had blocked me on every platform and showed no signs of reconsidering his decision. His Instagram story appeared on the third day with a cryptic message that cut me to the bone. Loyalty isn't optional. The post got dozens of likes and supportive comments from our mutual friends, all of them taking his side in the breakup. A week after the eviction, I drove past our old apartment to see if there were any signs that Marcus missed me or regretted his harsh response to my text. What I found was worse than I could have imagined. A moving truck was parked outside, and I could see Marcus directing movers as they carried furniture and boxes up the stairs to our old place. He had already found someone new to move in, a pretty blonde woman who looked young and eager as she carried houseplants and picture frames into what used to be my home. They were laughing about something, and Marcus looked lighter and happier than I had seen him in months. He had replaced me completely in the span of 7 days. I sat in my car across the street, watching this woman arrange her belongings in the space where my things used to be. She was everything I wasn't. Bubbly, obviously grateful for Marcus's attention, someone who probably would never take his devotion for granted or text her ex-boyfriend when she felt ignored. The realization that Marcus was better off without me was crushing in a way I hadn't expected. I had always assumed that if we broke up, he would be the one struggling to move on while I easily found someone better. But he was thriving while I was sleeping on my friend's couch and wearing the same 3 outfits because most of my clothes had been ruined. My attempts to reconnect with Tyler, the ex who had started this whole mess, were completely unsuccessful. After getting his ego boost from my attention and the drama that followed, he had lost interest completely. He stopped responding to my messages and blocked me when I became too persistent in trying to recreate whatever connection we used to have. I realized that Tyler had never been a real option, just a fantasy I had used to make myself feel better about the routine aspects of my relationship with Marcus. The excitement I thought I was missing was just the chaos and uncertainty that comes with dating someone unreliable. Marcus's stability, which I had found boring, was actually the foundation of a healthy relationship. But that realization came too late to matter. Marcus had moved on with someone who appreciated what he offered, while I was stuck dealing with the consequences of my impulsive decision to reach out to someone from my past. One text message had cost me my home, my relationship, my social circle, and my sense of security. The worst part was how quickly everyone in our shared social circle had taken sides, and how clearly they had chosen Marcus over me. Our mutual friend stopped inviting me to group events and gatherings, and several people who had been friendly to me for months suddenly became cold and distant when they saw me in public. I became the cautionary tale that people shared at parties and social gatherings. The woman who had cheated on her devoted boyfriend by texting her ex, who had lost everything because she couldn't appreciate what she had. My story was simplified and distorted with each retelling, but the core message remained the same. I was someone who couldn't be trusted. Sarah's patience with my situation started wearing thin after 2 weeks of me occupying her living room and monopolizing her space with my emotional crisis. She had her own life to live and her own relationships to maintain, and my presence was beginning to affect her social life as well. People were starting to associate her with my scandal, and she wasn't willing to sacrifice her reputation for my comfort. I found a studio apartment across town that I could barely afford on my salary as a part-time administrative assistant. The place was depressing and cramped, with thin walls that let me hear every argument and television show in the neighboring units. It was a far cry from the comfortable apartment I had shared with Marcus, but it was all I could manage on my own. Moving into my own place forced me to confront how much I had depended on Marcus for my sense of stability and belonging. His income had subsidized our lifestyle, his friends had become my social circle, and his presence had made me feel secure in a way I hadn't appreciated until it was gone. Without him, I felt adrift and uncertain about everything. My job performance suffered as I struggled to focus on work while dealing with the emotional aftermath of the breakup. My boss noticed my distraction and declining productivity, and I received a formal warning about my professional conduct. The last thing I could afford was to lose my job on top of everything else, but I couldn't seem to pull myself together enough to care about spreadsheets and filing systems. Months passed without any sign that Marcus regretted his decision or missed what we had together. His social media showed him looking happy and settled with his new girlfriend, taking trips and attending events that we used to go to together. He had seamlessly replaced me in every aspect of his life, as if our 2 years together had never happened. The holidays were particularly brutal, spent alone in my studio apartment while scrolling through social media photos of Marcus and his new girlfriend at parties and family gatherings that I used to attend. They looked genuinely happy together, in a way that Marcus and I hadn't for months before our breakup. She brought out a side of him that I had apparently suppressed. I tried dating other people, but explaining my recent relationship history was almost impossible without sounding like the villain in my own story. How do you tell someone that your last boyfriend threw you out for texting your ex without admitting that you were being emotionally unfaithful? Most men either judged me harshly or assumed I was too unstable for a serious relationship. The loneliness was overwhelming, especially when I compared my current situation to the domestic comfort I had shared with Marcus. Coming home to an empty apartment every night, eating dinner alone, having no one to share the small details of my day with, all of it reminded me of what I had thrown away through my own poor judgment. I kept replaying that Tuesday night, wondering what would have happened if I had just put my phone down and tried harder to engage Marcus in conversation. If I had been more direct about feeling ignored instead of seeking attention from someone else. If I had deleted Tyler's number months ago instead of keeping him as a backup option for my ego. But those what-ifs didn't change my current reality. I was alone in a depressing apartment, working a dead-end job, and dealing with a damaged reputation that followed me wherever I went. The 7 words I had sent to Tyler had cost me everything I had spent 2 years building with Marcus, and there was no way to take them back. The cruelest irony was that I had texted Tyler because I felt ignored and unappreciated by Marcus, but losing Marcus had taught me exactly how much attention and care I had been receiving. He had been a devoted boyfriend who remembered my coffee order, fixed things in our apartment, and included me in his future plans. I had traded all of that for a few minutes of feeling desired by someone who ultimately didn't care about me at all. Late at night in my studio apartment, I would look at old photos of Marcus and me together, remembering moments when we had been genuinely happy. Vacations we had taken, holidays we had celebrated, quiet evenings when we had felt perfectly content in each other's company. All of those memories were tainted now by the knowledge that I had destroyed something good through my own selfishness. I finally understood what people meant when they talked about appreciating what you have before it's gone. Marcus hadn't been perfect, but he had been faithful, stable, and committed to building a life together. His attention had been focused on video games for a few hours, but his devotion had been focused on me for 2 years. I had let momentary frustration blind me to the bigger picture of what we had together. The text to Tyler had been born from a moment of feeling sorry for myself, but it had revealed something deeper about my character that I didn't like acknowledging. I was someone who kept backup options, who sought validation from multiple sources, who was willing to hurt someone I loved when I felt my ego wasn't being sufficiently fed. Marcus had seen that truth about me and decided he deserved better. He had found someone who appreciated his steady love instead of taking it for granted, someone who didn't need constant reassurance or external validation to feel secure in the relationship. His new girlfriend was getting the best version of him because she brought out his best qualities instead of his insecurities. Now, a year later, I'm still living alone and working the same job, watching Marcus's life unfold through mutual friends and occasional social media glimpses. He proposed to his new girlfriend 6 months ago, and they're planning a wedding that will happen in the same venue where I used to imagine getting married someday. I've learned to live with the consequences of my actions, but I haven't learned to forgive myself for the stupidity of what I did. 7 words, sent in a moment of petty frustration, destroyed the best relationship I had ever had, and I have to live with that knowledge every day. The woman who sent that text thought she was just seeking a little attention, but she ended up losing everything that actually mattered. The hardest part is knowing that somewhere out there, Marcus is living the life we could have had together with someone who deserves it more than I did. Someone who would never text her ex-boyfriend when her current boyfriend was focused on something else for a few hours. Someone who understands that loyalty isn't just about not cheating, it's about not keeping one foot out the door of your relationship. I think about that Tuesday night constantly, wondering how such a small action could have such enormous consequences. But I know now that it wasn't really about one text message. It was about the mindset that led me to send it, the pattern of taking Marcus for granted while keeping Tyler as an option in the back of my mind. Marcus saw that pattern and decided he didn't want to spend his life with someone who viewed him as disposable. He chose himself over trying to fix someone who didn't appreciate what she had, and he was right to do it. I just wish I had learned that lesson before I lost the chance to be the person he deserved. The text message was deleted from my phone within minutes of sending it, but its consequences will follow me for the rest of my life. Every time I'm tempted to take someone's love for granted, every time I consider keeping backup options, every time I feel sorry for myself in a relationship, I remember Marcus standing by that door with his coffee mug, looking at me like I was a stranger who had disappointed him. I destroyed my own happiness with 7 words, and the worst part is that I can't even blame anyone but myself. Marcus didn't overreact or punish me unfairly. He just refused to accept being treated as a backup plan in his own relationship. He knew his worth and chose to find someone who would appreciate it, while I'm still learning mine through the consequences of not appreciating his. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one.